Welcome back to the channel, fellow aviators. I am back with you. I thought today, since we had a lot of yippee yap in the last episode, we just get straight into it. So we're just sitting on the edge of the runway here out in Glacier Park where we landed last time. And we're heading back to Spokane, Washington. And the plan today is we are going to do a VOR approach. We talked a little about that in the last episode. We're going to do a missed approach, and then we're just going to circle all the way back around and then finish up with an ILS. So we'll talk a little bit about the plan as we get further down the road, but without further ado, let's just go ahead and get going. So let me go ahead and drop the brake as I'm trying to look at my Bravo throttle quadrant, and we will see if we can clear the approach course. Throw on our landing light. All right, let's just go ahead and get lined up right on there on the center line. Make sure we look down at our HSI, make sure that's all centered up. And let's go ahead and bring the throttle all the way up here. And away we go. All right, coming up around 985, 90 knots. Positive rate. Gear up. And start a slight right turn into our course heading. Nice and simple. Right around 120, 130 knots or so will probably be our VY speed. We don't have to hit it exactly. All right, so let's come over to pull that out. We're going to, let's do a climb rate of, let's say, around 1500. Put our autopilot on. We'll put our heading and nav. All right, that is it. All right, excellent. So we have a ways to go, but let's go ahead and just kind of cover what we are going to go over on this flight. So you can see we're going at this point, if we come over to the wrong camera, we're going direct to Hilly, which starts the Hilly 3 approach. And the reason I chose that, as I mentioned before, mostly when you're doing a sitter starts, mostly for jet traffic, but let's go ahead and bring up our charts. Let's bring up our Hilly 3. And you can see we're going to be going direct to Hilly. We may, what I might end up doing is put in this MLP. Not sure why I didn't pick that up initially, but we should be going Hilly, then ropes. We'll come down here, and then we see Greg. We got a procedure turn, which we'll talk a little bit about here when we go to the approach chart, then back to Greg, then Lowell, and then actually is the VOR approach. So what is this procedure turn that we're talking about? Well, let's pull up this chart here. And if we zoom in, Greg, there we go, that is where we start that VOR approach. We're going to be coming in from the west over towards this mountain range here, just to the east of, so I'm sorry, I guess we're coming in from the east going westbound. So the right-hand part of the approach plate, and we're going to be coming in almost directly in towards it. And so once we get towards Greg, hilly. Then we get over to Greg, or Geg, or whatever that is, Spokane, GEG. If we try to make that hard right turn on a course of 046, we don't want anything above around 90 degrees on our turn. And let me just, before, as I'm busy yippity yapping here, let's just check, make sure everything is going okay. Airspeed's good. Just want to make sure we're doing okay. Let's not embarrass ourselves. Like I said before, we don't want anything more than a 90-degree turn to get on course, and especially when you're dealing with the VOR. Remember I talked about a little bit last week, VORs are really not that accurate. And so what we're going to do here is get over to Greg, head southwestbound on a course of 226, and this becomes the procedure turn. We're going to go 226. We're going to be at around hilly. We want to be at 7,500 feet. Mulligan Pass here is at 9,000. So we'll be holding probably about 7,500 feet because we have this terrain here until we get to Spokane, GEG. Once we get there, we're going to descend down to 4,500, outbound 226, continue heading down. We have about a 10-mile protected area here. Then we will make a left turn on a heading of 181. Once we get on that course, we're going to start a timer for 1 minute. Then we are going to make a U-turn 001 and then pick up the 046 radial back inbound to Spokane at 4,500 feet. Then at lull, we're going to drop down to 4,000 feet, which is our final approach fix. That's what the X represents right there on the chart. And then from there, we need to get down to the MDA, minimum decision altitude, 2,960 feet. So we'll put 3,000 in our altitude acquire. And then the missed approach point will be DME D 10.8 from the Spokane GEG VOR. And at that point, we need to be in a position to land. If we get to 10.8 and we can't see the runway, then we are going to execute a missed approach by starting a climb back up to, climbing left turn to 4,500 feet, direct to the Spokane VOR and hold. So we will climb to 4,500 feet. Once we get over the runway, we'll start a left-hand turn as we look at the plan view on the top. Left turn back to Greg. And then at that point, we will do the missed approach procedure. And as I look outside here, as you can see, we're starting to pick up a little bit of icing. So let's go ahead and throw on our fuel vent. I'll stall warning heat, windshield heat. And then if you look, when I do the windshield heat, check out what happens here. We should be on a heading of about 230. Look what's going on with our compass. It's going 270, and as this cycles through, and you'll see it cycling down here, it will move that compass around. So I've never experienced that, quite frankly, but I don't know if that's a bug. And let me know if anybody else has seen that. Look at our cabin temperature, 68 degrees. Looks like that's okay. Just a tad on the chilly side. We'll just pull out a little bit more heat. Keep our environmentals good. All right, so back to where we were. And we're coming up on 14,500 for 16,000. So we should get a little ding here at about 400 feet. Anyways, so the missed approach procedure, make that left-hand turn back to the VOR. Then we can enter a hold. If we look at our procedure here, we see 15,000 climbing, 16. Hilly, ropes, KSFF. We are going to have to intervene at some point here. Now, if we want, we could do this probably fully. As you see here, it's in our GPS. So even though it's a localizer, we actually could use GPS guidance. But what I think we're going to do is we're going to do this old school. We'll get over probably ropes here. We'll then proceed direct to Greg. As we get a little bit closer, then we'll switch over. And where I'm highlighting right here on the upper left above the airspeed indicator, we will switch over from GPS to VLOC, and we'll just fly this old school. All right, so that is the plan. So what I think I'll do here is I'm just going to cut you out a little bit because we'll definitely have some flying once we get lower. I'm just going to hold 16,000 here. I'm going to, off camera, I'm going to put in, I don't know why I didn't pick it up for the Hilly 3 arrival. When I put it in here, I'm just going to interject Hilly here, and then just so we have some good, not Hilly, I'm sorry, Mulligan Pass, MLP. I don't know why it didn't show up here. I'll just try to see if I can reload that in on the Hilly 3. Mostly because I want to be down around, as you see here, 9,000 feet, or it's 9,900 feet in that quadrant. I want to be around 10,000 feet when we get here. Then we can descend down to 7,500 feet at Hilly, and we'll hold that until we get to GEG Spokane. All right, so that is the plan. So let me check back in with you as we get a little bit closer. All right, everybody, I am back with you. If we look at down on our GPS, we see we're about 19.5 miles out, so probably a little bit late on our descent. I've dialed in 10,000 feet, which is what we want, and let's go ahead and put a vertical descent rate of like 1,200 feet per minute. Sounds good. Since we're a little bit behind, we do have a lot of time here, so we'll hit engage. You'll also see we're starting to pick up some ice, and that's going to be a factor we're going to have to deal with as we fly around over the winter. So I've just been continuously kind of cycling on our anti-icing. If you see, and we haven't picked up any actually airframe icing right now, if we look down at our temperature, we'll see we're about -20 or so, and that's about correct in terms of, see some train ahead of us here, so I'm just going to reduce that rate of descent here. If you do see some white splotches on the black leading edge on the boot, that would be indication of some wing anti-ice, and then we could use our boots to remove it. So far looks okay, and then as you see, after it clears up, I just recycle it back. Off again. All right, so we're heading back down to 10,000 feet. So I think I talked a little bit last week about, in the last episode, I should say, about had a pretty neat thing happen, and I was out in Las Vegas. I had just landed. I did a JFK to Las Vegas, so long flight, like 5 hours. It was really long, but I had a good solid 24 hours in Las Vegas. So as we walk out, and of course we have a van service that'll pick us up, or car service that'll pick us up and take us to our hotel. So I'm out there with my iPhone, we're just chit-chatting, and then all of a sudden I hear someone call my name. I look up, and it turns out it was my former sim partner from new hire training. He had gone over to American Airlines, and so he was out there doing, I think, a Phoenix to Las Vegas flight. So literally just ran into him out in the van area, which was really, really cool. So we ended up hanging out for the entire day and grabbing lunch and wandering around. So it was totally just awesome to see him. I hadn't seen him since he had left my company probably about a year after. He lives in Miami, and so it works out really, really well for him. Miami is a major American hub, and so it was just totally cool to run into him. I haven't seen him since I was, I think, based there when I became a new captain. So that was in 2023. So almost a good solid 2.5 years ago since I've seen him. So that was totally awesome. So hard life. Anyway, so we're continuing down 13,000 for 10. And then as we cross over Mulligan, which I put into our flight plan, Mulligan Pass MLP, then we can continue down to 7,500, which we will hold all the way, or actually, I'm sorry, 9,000. Let's just pull up the chart here. I'm doing all this guessing here. Pull up our EFB. Let's pull up the Hilly. We want 9,000 to Hilly, so we'll just continue down. And then at Hilly, we can drop down to 7,500 feet. And that's what we're looking at right here. 7,500. You can see we're on the airway 9,000. All right. So that is the plan. In fact, let's go back to here. 6 miles. I don't think we're going to do that in 2,000 feet. Actually, we can hold that a little bit. So we're coming over this mountainous terrain, so I'll probably hold it until just before. It's only 1,000 feet. So we'll just hold 10,000 here as we're skimming kind of across to the top of the mountains. In reality, those what you're seeing right here is kind of your minimum altitudes, minimum MEAs, minimum en route altitude. We don't have to go down that low. That's just kind of the minimum that we can be at and provide radar coverage, radio navigation, and clear the terrain. So, in fact, at this point, we can probably just go here and we can just reduce this down to 500 or so, 300. Just gradually bring our way down there. So the next time I'll check in probably is right around Hilly as we start our descent down to 7,500, and then at that point, I think it's only like 18 miles. So I'll stick with you probably the rest of the route, and we will go over a little bit more about the VOR approach. All right, so see you once again in just a few seconds. All right, everybody, I am back with you. We're coming up on Hilly, and I thought I would check in a little bit early because we see here we're starting to pick up a lot of airframe icing here. We obviously have some on the windows, and if we look out on the leading edge of the wings, we see a bunch of white splotches, which would be icing accumulation on the wings. So let's come back down here. We'll just flip back on all of our heat, and now to get rid of that icing on the leading edge, we're going to hit the boots. Did I hit it or no? There we go. And that should begin to cycle through and get rid of all that icing. There we go. You can vaguely see that. All right, coming up over Hilly now. Got about 3 miles to go, and then we're going to head down to 2,500. Just checking the wings here that they're remaining clear. So what is, I just mentioned it real briefly. Obviously, if I look down here at our temperature gauge, you see we're doing about plus 18 degrees. So in reality, I don't think you'd pick up much icing when you're plus 18 degrees, right? The general rule is 10 degrees Celsius, positive 10 degrees Celsius and below is when you would want to engage. Hold on. So we're coming up on here. So let's go ahead and increase that rate of descent down to about 1,000 feet here. And coming up over the top Hilly, we're at 9,000. Go ahead and bring up our chart. And we will go ahead and engage, and that'll bring us down to 7,500. All right, so once again, when do you need to use anti-icing? Well, 10 degrees, positive 10 degrees, and visible moisture. You should have your anti-icing on. Obviously, plus 20 degrees, you're not going to be getting anything. So something's going kind of slightly wrong here. When do you really not need it? Well, there's a direct correlation between the air temperature and how much water vapor that air can carry. All right, 85 for 75. So the colder the air is, the less water vapor it can hold, right? That's why we have hot, humid days and not cold, humid days. And that temperature is right around negative 40 degrees. So if you're flying in the airliners, even if you're flying through a cloud, negative 40, you're probably not going to pick it up because there literally is just no water vapor that the air is holding. So you're not going to be able to ice up. So anyways, I just want to cover that real quickly. So we're going to level off here at 7,500 feet. We're inbound to ropes, which will be our last fix, but it's on the same heading. So what I'm going to do here is just click Greg, and then I'm going to hit direct. direct, and then that should, if I go back, flight plan, and now we're proceeding direct to Greg, right? We got 32 miles, and then we'll be in Greg. I keep calling it Greg, sorry, Spokane. What a dumbass. All right, so we're coming up over the GEGs over to Spokane, and we're at 7,500 feet. We're gonna hold that till we get all the way there. So let's look at this approach chart. We've really kind of covered almost everything real quickly, but if we brief it up, we're looking at the VOR runway 4 left approach. VOR frequency 115.5 and a final approach course is 046. So let's come up over to our nav and we see 115.5, and if we look at our CDI, which is the yellow needle, it's set on 046, so that is set. Low will be at 4,000 feet, and our MDA will be 2,900 feet or 3,000 feet. In the event of a missed approach, we're going to make a climbing left turn to 4,500 feet and then direct back to the Spokane VOR and hold. If we look down at the notes, we see what DME is required, and we have that. That is right underneath our HSI. So we have a DME. Circling a runway 22 left is not authorized at night, and cold temperature altitude correction required below negative 15 degrees Celsius. Right, that checks out. Looking at the plan view, we see the highest obstacle is 45.55, and that is about 5 to 8 miles off of our course, so that should not be a factor. Looking at the profile view, we can see we're going to enter over the top of the VOR at 7,500 feet. Then we're going to head outbound on a heading of 226. Reverse course, back in, hold 4,500 feet until we get over Spokane, down to 4,000 feet at Lowell, down to 3,000 feet. Once we hit DME 10.8, that is our missed approach point, and we either need to land or execute a missed approach, which is what we're going to do. And then once we get down there, we need to have at 2960, which will be 1,000 feet above the ground. We need to have for a category A, which is what this aircraft will be doing. We'll be doing 90 knots. So we need to have a mile and a quarter visibility. All right. So I'm just going to kind of leave this chart up here for the rest of the flight, just so you can kind of see what we're doing. We still have another 25 miles to hit towards Greg. So what the plan's going to be, as I said, once again, this we could use our RNAV and it will fly the entire approach for us. But let's go ahead and use old school techniques. So as we get a little bit closer, what we're going to do is we're going to come up to right above the airspeed indicator where it says GPS. We're going to click that button. That's going to put us into picking up the VOR. We're going to manually tune in, which we can do right now, 226. So let's go ahead and dial into, there's 220. Let's just get a little bit closer so I can see it better. There's 220, 225, 226 roughly, right there. Actually, obviously would be the reciprocal of our 046, so that is set. Airframe is looking good. All this off. All right, so that is the plan. So a couple people have asked me, when can we dial in the next altitude? Let's say when we're doing the missed approach, or, well, the main thing we have to worry about is, are we captured, right? So if you're flying, let's say an Airbus, if you're in altitude acquire mode, Alt A, and you switch our altitude, it can, depending on what mode it's doing, it can continue to descend, right? So we just need to make sure that we're fully captured. And what you're going to see down here in the autopilot panel, or right next to it, our indicator right here, you'll see like CAPT, means it's capturing it. We don't want to make any altitude corrections, but right now we know our next altitude is going to be what, 4,500 feet. So we'll go ahead and dial that in. Dial in 4,500 feet, and we'll do that once we get over the top of the VOR here in 19 miles. And we are still picking up a lot of icing, even though it's telling me it's plus 20 degrees. So I'm going to believe it. Let's get on our pitot heat. So we're going to just leave that on maybe for now. We've got our mixture is full rich. Bring our props full forward, less stuff, because it's going to get real busy here on the approach. Now, the thing we're going to have to As I look at my autopilot panel, you see flight directors out, heading, nav, approach. Approach is not, and BC stands for back course. Approach is not going to work when we're doing a VOR approach. So we're going to have to use heading to maintain our, do our course corrections. It's not going to necessarily do that for us. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Once again, we could use our nav, but we'll just, hopefully the wind's not too bad up here and we don't have to have really large course corrections. And that's another reason we're going to go all the way out from that VOR. We're going to try to use that whole 10 miles so we can get ourselves right on course, get ourselves slowed down, do what we need to do. In fact, what we're going to do here, we don't want to preset that, is we are going to go right straight ahead. And as we get a little bit closer, here about, I don't know, 2-3 miles away, then we'll switch over. So that is the plan. So I think this will probably be, I think we talked a little bit in the last episode, this is probably going to be the last flight we do here for the Black Square, at least with this NeoFly series for now. I think it's time to probably pick up a new aircraft. I'm leaning towards that Aerostar, the 600. Doing that will actually open us up a different category of flights we can do, which should hopefully generate more money, which is VIP. Technically, this the Black Square here, this Baron, is not certified for, I forget what category it is, but for VIP work. So, and I'm a big fan of the, I mean, Black Square and Aerostar. I know a lot of people spam boys on both sides. I think they're both really, really good aircraft. I think what I'm going to do here is hustle down a little bit more. So once we do that approach, once we get to 4,000 feet, we get over Lowell and we descend down to 3,000. We're going to kind of want to do that relatively quickly. You see from, as we zoom in here, from Lowell, it's only 3.3 miles. And if we are holding 90 knots, 478 feet per minute rate of descent. So we're going to want, I'm going to hustle this down maybe a little bit more, use probably 1,400 feet. I don't want to get too crazy because I want to keep us nice and stabilized, just to give us ourselves enough, as much time as possible. All right, what are we looking here? 6 miles? All right. All right, so at this stage, what we can do is we'll come over to right, going straight ahead. It can take us right towards the VOR, and then we can hit up here as it's flashing right by the airspeed indicator. We'll hit that. We go to nav. We look at our GPS. It says VLOC. That's what we want to see. Now, in the real world, these procedure turns don't really do them, only if you're doing this kind of stuff. I didn't use Beyond ATC or say intentions for this flight, knowing we were going to do a couple different things, and I just wasn't quite sure how well, in fact, Beyond ATC or say intentions was going to handle the missed approach. So I didn't bother. I just kind of wanted to get going, right? So, but in the real world, you really don't do these procedural turns. What would have happened is they would have already kind of vectored us onto like a downwind or widen us out, and we would have joined the approach outside the Spokane VOR. But this is how you would do it if you are by yourself, if you're not using any artificial intelligence for your air traffic control. And I thought it'd just be a great way to show what the procedure turn is. But literally, I probably haven't done a procedure turn since, I don't know, since I was when I got my instrument rating. All right, so that's about a mile out. Let's go ahead and turn. Start our left-hand turn, and to do that, we want to be into heading. And now we're going to remain in heading mode until we do our missed approach. All right, you see, if we look out at our HSI, you see it's kind of moving around all over the place. Well, that is and let's go ahead and get down. I'm busy talking. Because when you're right over the top of the station, like we are right now, you lose actually the signal, right? Because it's going out in a radius, and there's nothing directly over the station. So station passage, you're going to get that kind of flip-flopping, which is going to be important for us as we come back around and line ourselves up, not to start following it. So if you're doing a VOR and you're getting close to the station, don't continue to try to adjust for it, because it's actually just beginning to lose the signal. Just kind of hold what you got. And that'll make sense as we probably flip around here one more time. So as we get a little bit closer, we're going to want to look at that HSI. And if we look down at our HSI and we look underneath there is our DME. You can see it's saying 3.2, 3.3, it's climbing up. So it's got our distance and it's got our airspeed. We can start pulling back a little bit more power now, because we're going to need this. I want to get us kind of situated out a little bit early, especially this is for an actual IMC conditions. All right, so we see we're going to have to make one more turn to the left. Now, if we look up at our 55 for 45. If you look up at our chart, we have our position indicator. You can see we're a little bit off course. That's okay. What we're going to want to do here, let's make a turn once again, 181. And as we roll out on our course, let's go ahead and hit a timer, and we're just going to go out for a minute. And the reason we're doing that is so we have enough time to go out and then circle and come back around, because at a 2-minute turn, if we just try to execute a 180, we go way past. So what we want to do is we're going to want to go at least a minute out. And you can see, since we have the ability to look at our chart, we're just now kind of crossing over. That's probably when we should start our at least 1 minute out. So we'll go about a minute and a half out. And then we're going to make a right turn back to the north. All right, so what we want to do here, we've leveled off at 4,500 feet. We're nice and level, come back to here, and now our next altitude we know is going to be 3,000 feet. We're going to set that. If we look at our chart from the VOR to low, we have 7.5 miles, so we don't have to hustle down a tremendous amount, but we will go back to here, use 1,000 feet, that should be good. Let's look at our timer. I'm going to wait a little bit longer because I don't want to overshoot and have to try to correct again. Like I said, after you level out, at least 1 minute when you're using the autopilot, because it's going to make a complete 360-degree turn in 2 minutes. So here we're going about half of that. So it's at least a minute. What do we come up on here? 145. All right, let's go ahead and now make our right-hand turn. So let's make sure we don't want to go in too quickly. We want to make sure it goes to the right. And now we're going to come back around to 001 north. Good enough. And as we look down at our HSI here, we're going to be looking to make sure that we are coming back in around now. Let's go ahead and start our turn in. A little bit late on that. So let's just make a slight wind correction angle here. How far do you move the correction out? I usually just use out so that CDI to the bar right about there. And start coming back in. Greg. Just going to activate that leg. All right, so what we can do here is we're getting a little bit closer. So I'm still a little bit further out. So let's try to get ourselves back on course here. We do have 6 miles. Let's go ahead and bring on our first notch of flaps as we're back on course here. Just gradually coming back in, so we'll make another correction. All right, see if that works. Let's go ahead and bring our gear down too. Once again, we're going to want to get ourselves nice and configured nice and early because the workload is going to start to increase here in a little bit. And we can see we're starting to drift out slightly, so it looks like around 0.60 is what we're going to want. Right now, what you want to be doing is this is the time you're really going to have to start increasing your scan. So what I'm looking at right now is VSI, airspeed, altitude, vertical speed, and back. So just constantly keeping my scan going. Now we're under 2 miles here, so we're going to need to be very careful here about following that needle here. So I want you to kind of keep watching it as we get a little bit closer here, and you're going to watch that VSI needle start to move around. And if you try to follow it, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not on course. You can really mess yourself up. All right, so coming up on a mile out. Around 18 inches of manifold pressure. Looks about right. Okay, 0.2, good enough. Engage. So now we can start. You see that needle start to watch that needle there. It's moving around. You don't want to make any adjustments. Do not follow that needle. All right, now we're looking for 4,000 feet. We're going to hold out all the way to Lowell. It actually really is kind of crappy weather out here. We picked up a little bit of speed, but we have an overspending thing. And so you want to be kind of careful here about starting to make a lot of, especially if you're relatively new, starting to make a lot of throttle changes. That's why I kind of got that gear and that first notch of flaps down, because I want to be able to get those drag items out to kind of control my airspeed. If I was trying to work on it a lot here, let's kind of hold around 17, 18, we saw that held us a little over 100 knots. And so airspeed should start to slow down just a tad. All right, so what's our next altitude? Well, it's going to be the MDA from Lowell, so it's going to be 2960. And let's go into here. We're going to dial in 3,000 feet. Right click, and I'm going to want to come down a little bit faster. We'll call that like 1300. I'm not going to get too crazy here. 3.4, and we can check in our VSI. Still slightly out to the right, but I'm going to call that good. You don't want to make too many adjustments here. We're within, so airspeed's good. It's 100 knots. It's going to increase a little bit as we come back down. It looks like 17 inches of manifold pressure or so works pretty well for us. Altitude's holding 4,000. Unfortunately, it didn't pick up its... It never sequenced properly through, even though I tried to do that. Activate. We'll activate that leg. All right, there we go. All right, 100 knots. Airspeed's good. Altitude's 4,000. Still slightly out to the right, so I'm just going to make like a 2-degree change there. The last thing you want to do is, as you're getting close, is making all these radical moves here. But you can see having an autopilot really helps out here. All right. Let's just double check here. Right click, 3,000 feet. That's what we want. Right click again, 1,300. It's our rated descent. Mixtures bridge props are full forward. Anti-icing is on. We also could have set a timer if we wanted. Okay, 0.3, engage. 4,000 descending. 3,000. Airspeed is going to increase a little bit. I'm just going to pull back just a little bit. I don't want to get too crazy here. And now, you see where it's 8.0. Now we're looking at DME. We're at 8.2, 8.3. Okay, leveled out. Let's go back down 17, 18 inches of manifold pressure. We've captured it, so now the thing we want to do is we're looking down here, 9.3. We're a mile, almost a mile out. What's our next altitude? $4,500. All right, so it's going to get a lot of work here real quickly here. So 10.0, we're looking for 10.8. We're about 8.8 miles away. Oh, and that's come to here, and what we want, we're going to want to climb. (1,500 feet per minute). And now we wait. Looking outside, do we see the runway? 10.8, there we are. We are not going to be able to land. This is a missed approach for real. All right, so what we can do here, let's go ahead and bring up our gear. Start our climb. Bring up our flaps, and now we're looking for 4,500 feet. And now we're just waiting until we get to the runway here. And we're going to be making a left-hand turn back to the VOR. So as we're looking over here, never did see the runway here. We got another 1.5 miles out. Boy, never did see it, did we? All right, so this is a nice missed approach for real. All right, coming up over the runway now, so let's start our left-hand turn. Let's get into the turn. We know it should be right behind us. I'm just going to slow down here a little bit to bring our power back. We don't need to be going that fast here in the kind of in the pattern. All right, so we're starting our turn. Let's go now. So we can activate that leg here. Direct. Activate. And then we're going to want to hit nav and GPS. Stopped our turn, so we're going to go back to heading. But we don't need to be in VLOC anymore, right? We're no longer, unless we wanted to track, literally physically track back in, which we could do off the VOR. We could flip this around. Head back in towards the VOR and make our adjustments from there. All right, but we should be able to hit reg, activate leg 2. Okay, reg. Oh, I keep saying that. Is it not letting me? Oh, there it is. All right, let's go back, check out our map and our heading back. All right, so that is it. So that's our missed approach. Now we're heading back to that VOR. And what we can do is we can enter the hold once we get a little bit closer if we want. But what I'm going to do right now is just go ahead and set us up for ILS 2 right, and we're going to want to go to COE, and then we'll pull that chart up here in a second. So 062. And if I pull that chart up right here, we're going to go up to Cor d'Alene, and that's at 7,100 feet. So let's go ahead and engage. So we'll start a climb up to 7,100 feet, and I will pick you back up when we get inbound for the ILS. All right, so hope you enjoyed that. That was a lot of flying in there, doing the missed approach. Bring our power back in as we're starting our climb. This is slow up. So there was a lot of flying back in there. That's how you fly a VOR approach with nav as opposed to GPS. Now we're just going to go ahead and hit the ILS and go ahead and land it and call it a flight. All right, so I will pick you up, probably just returning like on final around in between Co and Aztem. All right. See you all in just a few seconds. All right, everybody. I am back with you. As you see up in the chart, we're coming up on Co. And so at this point, what we're going to do is start a turn. Looks like 272. So we'll just left-hand turn to around 270. Looks good. And we can start briefing out the approach chart. So we're looking now at the ILS localizer 22 right. Localizer frequency 111.7 and a final approach course of 271. So let's check our GPS. We've got 111.7. HSI is 221. Hansen at 4,300 feet, and our minimums will be 2257 barrel or 300 on the radar altimeter. So let's move this up to 300. And as we turn inbound here, what we're going to see is if I hit approach, nothing's going to happen because we haven't picked up the glide slope yet. So as we look at the plan view, we see we have a lot of mountainous terrain. As we go down the profile view, I want to point something out here is as we go in towards Aztem at 7,100 feet, once we cross Aztem, we can drop down to 5,700 feet, then down to 4,300 feet. So you see there's multiple step downs here, and the reason is probably we have a lot of terrain that you see in the plan view. So we have two options once you're cleared for the approach. One, as soon as we cross Aztem, we can drop down to 5,700 feet, which like you see I have programmed here up in our altitude acquire system. I've got 1,000 feet per minute. Or we can wait till we just pick up the glide slope and take the glide slope all the way down. So there's both ways are totally acceptable. You can either just wait till we get to the glide slope, or you can start stepping down. So that is completely your choice once you're cleared for the approach. Matter of fact, let's go ahead as I slowing up just a little bit here. Make that turn a little bit easier to do. And we're coming up, and we just right past it. Our localizer frequency. So let's see if we can get ourselves centered up before we get to Aztem here, which is another 1.9 miles. Take a full deflection. So what would have been probably a better option for us would have been to stay on GPS, have it nav itself in there, and then it would have already corrected for the overshoot. So I'm just trying to get ourselves lined up. I'm waiting for, as we look at our HSI, once we start seeing the glide slope indicator, then we can arm the approach. Once again, if I hit approach, nothing happens. Oh, there we go. We just picked up the glide slope. You see glide slope approach up here. And now it will fly the localizer for us. We don't have to worry about making all those moves. We can also, as you see, we're still way under the glide slope, so we can either start bringing ourselves down a little bit, or we'll just hold what we got. Why would we maybe want to step down versus hold the glide slope? Well, you see we're a little bit farther out, and we have some mountainous terrain. So in the real world, depending on how far out you are, once you're starting to get 15, 20 miles out, depending on your system, it may not hold that glide slope and or the localizer very well. So a procedure I will use a lot of times, especially in the Airbus, is I wait till I get a little closer in. I'll keep the RNAV or the GPS, and then as I get a little bit closer, I will go ahead and, as I get on 1 dot deflection here, I'm just starting to slow up so I can get my first notch of flaps in. So I don't get too crazy on the descent, because I want to point out one more thing here as I'm talking. I just want to make sure we capture. Right about now or so, we should start seeing a slight decrease. There we go. So we are heading down. All right, so the thing I wanted to talk about, though, as we move down the chart specifically and zoom in, look at the glide slope, 3.6 degrees once we pass Hansen. So once again, here in a general aviation twin, not so much a big of a deal, but as you've heard me say before, especially when you're flying the airline 320s, 737s, you can either go down or you can slow down. You can't do both. So this is something, if I was doing this in the real world, 100%, I would be briefing up very, very early that we're going to be fully configured, or at least probably not. By the time I hit Hansen, I'm going to want to have gear down flaps 2, maybe even flaps 3 before I hit there, because that 3.6 is a fairly steep approach. You don't really see that a whole lot of other places. I can only think of maybe one or two other, like Santa Ana in California, that has some fairly difficult approaches. All right, so doing 120 knots, that's fine. We still don't have our gear down. We're a ways out. Look on our chart. We still have 3.5 miles to go to Hansen. So other than that, we are just going to go ahead and ride it all the way out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We covered a lot of stuff, a VOR approach, the missed approach procedure, and now an ILS approach. Next episode, I think like I said, we'll probably switch to the A2A Studios Aero 600, unless somebody else wants to see something, they put it down in the comments. We just need another twin that's very study level. So I hate to keep dipping into 2020 product. You know, it's been a year now. Obviously, the 2020 aircraft will work, but I don't really. If we can avoid it, I think we should try to stick with the 2024 stuff. All right, just checking for icing. Of course, I have all of my anti-icing on. I've got my mixtures full, rigs, props are full forward. If we look at our VSI, we notice we kind of really had a fairly large increase here, and that's because we've now finally picked up that 3.6 degree. Instead of coming down around 5 to 600, now we're coming around 700 to 900 feet per minute rate of descent. All right. .900 is a fairly steep profile. So what I'm going to do is I come up over Hansen here. Let's go ahead and start getting ourselves configured. So we are, at this point, we'd also want to put in our missed approach altitude as we cross Hansen, which would be 4,300. Climb 5,000. Never mind. So it's 5,000 for missed approach altitude. That can be put in there. So missed approach altitude is set. And let's pull out a little bit more power, and let's go into our second notch of flaps. And we're looking to stabilize right around. I don't think we need our charts anymore. Right around 90 knots, right there. That's about 100. Make sure our prop sync is not on. All right. All right, 90 knots, right on the money. So airspeed's good. Altitude's good. Check down our HSI. We are on glide slope and on localizer. Looking good. looking for, is it Barrow? Let me check one more time. 2250, so roughly 2300. All right, about 800 feet to go. About 500 feet to go. All right, we got the runway inside. Looks like it's a little bit of an offset. So let's go ahead and disengage the autopilot. Red over white, looking good. A little bit of a crosswind. Let's get the nose pointed straight ahead. A little bit of left aileron. Found it hard at least in 2024 to kind of land on one wheel, which I believe it or not I can kind of do when I'm flying a crosswind in the Airbus. So the procedure is probably just need a little bit of opposite rudder, so I need a little bit of right rudder pedal and left aileron to kind of keep us tracking straight. All right, but I'll take it. Anyways, everyone, it's been probably a fairly long episode, so I will just go ahead and cut us out here. As always, thanks for watching. I appreciate the support. If there's anything you'd like to see me do in the next episode or the following episodes, I don't think I think we covered just about everything here on this aircraft. RNAVs, localizers, or at least the VOR and an ILS. All right, everybody. As always, thanks for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one. Take care for now.